the Bain Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Bain Free Radio Hour. Today we bring you Griffin Barber's interview of Melissa Olthoff on her debut Bain novel, Rise from Ruin. After that, we jump into part 15 of the serialization of Mark Van Name's John and Lobo novel, One Jump Ahead. Hi there, I'm Griffin Barber, your host for today's edition of the Bain Free Radio Hour. Hello and welcome, Melissa.
Hi.
Melissa Olthoff is here today with us to talk about her debut Bain novel, Rise from Ruin. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Melissa?
Well, this time I swear I won't have an existential crisis on who I am, because I've done that before on the internet streets. I'm like, wait, who am I? Oh my gosh. So I am a sci-fi and fantasy author, and I sneak in romance because, I write what I love to read. And boy, have I been a reader my entire life. I remember getting busted by my dad for reading Berenstain Bears by Nightlight as a kid. And then I discovered Goosebumps and Thoroughbred series and Animorphs. And then, seventh grade rolls around. And my teacher says, girl, you cannot write your report on Animorphs. I'm like, but why? So I went to the bookstore and I discovered Anne McCaffrey's Dragonflight, the Dragon Riders of Pern series. And I never looked back because 11-year-old me wanted nothing more than to be a green dragon rider. And boy, was I so mad when I found out I couldn't do that. I was so mad, I went out and I joined the Air Force. as one does.
It's not an unknown story around Bain.
I know. Like, Casey Azell and I did not know each other until much later in life, and we literally joined the Air Force for the same reason. Like, well, if I can't fly dragons, I'm going to go fly. That worked out for her. It did not work out for me. I love flying. My ears, not so much. So my career took a different path than hers. And eventually we met up again and again until we became like awesome friends. So I bring up friends, by the way, because I have not been shy about the power of friendship. And the power of friendship has literally got me to this point. I spent years in the Air Force, got out, had a family, started a different career as an accountant. I'm not even joking. I am literally an accountant now. And Casey Moore's, my oldest friend, contacted me. He's like, hey, I wrote this story. Do you want to read it for me? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And that led to, hey, you should start writing again. Because we knew each other back in the day. We knew that we each wrote and read all the things. And he's like, hey, so have you heard of Chris Kennedy Publishing? Chris Kennedy, y'all, he is so freaking awesome. He's a great author, great publisher, and he always keeps a couple of open slots in his anthologies and has an open call for them. And that's how I got my start, was literally the power of friendship, because I would not have known about that if it wasn't for Casey.
Boy Casey.
Not girl Casey.
Boy Casey, yeah.
Two different Caseys. So I submitted, I was accepted, and then I got into the next open call anthology, and then I got my first, hey, we want you to write a story for this anthology in the Salvage Title universe. And then it was, hey, we want you to write a novel in the Salvage Title. No, we're kidding, a trilogy. We would like a trilogy. I'm like, okay, this is so cool. So I had my first novel come out just over 3 years ago. And Rise from Ruin will be it was supposed to be my 10th novel, but it's actually going to be my 11th, because that fourth book in my Salvage Title trilogy comes out a few days before Rise from Ruin. So it'll be my 11th novel. And a huge part of the reason I'm here is the power of friendship. The other reason I'm here is that the Bain Fantasy Adventure Award contest, I entered that a couple years ago. I came in second, and the short story that came in second is actually what I expanded into this novel. So I am still incredibly fortunate. 11-year-old me is still screaming, like just nonstop, shrieking, cackling, giggling. She is just going insane, because that right there, that is the coolest thing ever. And there are days where I'm like, how is this my life? It is so cool. So,
well, there's also a larger dose of talent that's involved in there. It's not just your friends, but you wrote a banger of a book, and I think that you want to thank your friends, but for encouraging you, but it was you. So
I am a very firm believer that I think Alona Andrews, I follow them. They're one of my favorites urban fantasy author teams, and we don't create in a vacuum. I'm a huge believer in like, we ingest things by reading and media and our friends and networking, and it's not just any one thing.
Right.
Hard work and talent. Yes, I am good at what I do. But I am fortunate in that I also have great editors that are excellent at what they do and help turn this banger of a story into something even greater. Haha.
Well said. So, the hardest question first then is what is the coolest aspect of Rise from Ruin for you?
I am going to break the rules because I'm feral. It is literally part of my brand. I am not going to tell you just one cool thing because it's impossible. Rise from Ruin has dragon riders and it has griffin riders. It has a post-apocalyptic setting. It has a military academy. It has flying on dragons. I literally open up the book, chapter 1, flying on the back of a dragon because you know what? It's cool. I have bonds between griffins and dragons, and I have a massive war that is threatening everything my main character loves. I can't just pick one thing. That is just so
Yes, you
rude.
can. And you should.
You know what? You know what, y'all? I said before we got on this podcast that Griffin is one of my favorite people, but right now he is not because he is trying to make me choose. So I'm going to pick 3 things for you because there are 3 different aspects to this novel that are near and dear to my heart. So first off, obviously, I loved Anne McCaffrey so much. I love Dragon Riders of Pern. There was a time where it became part of my entire personality and literally drove me into the Air Force. One of the things that just captured my imagination was that bond between rider and dragon. That concept, especially as a lonely 11-year-old girl, like you could have somebody in your life that sees all of you, every side of you, the things that you don't love, the things that aren't maybe so great, and doesn't love you in spite of them, but loves you because it's part of who you are. I love that concept. I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But getting to put my own spin on the bond between a rider and a griffin or a rider and a dragon was one of my favorite aspects to play with. I know Felix is one of your favorite characters. My utterly ridiculous and insanely brave griffin. This isn't what he looks like, but you know what? He's close enough, and he's mine. So I loved that. That was the coolest thing. But also the coolest thing was Dragon Rider, Griffin Rider, you're a rider. And my inner horse girl was like, oh, heck yes, we are leaning into this hard because we start out Rise from Ruin at the Tennyson Bonded Training Academy. And there are only so many Dragon Rider instructors and Griffin Rider instructors to go around. So you only have so many things you can ride. And what are they going to compensate with? Horses. Because you have to teach cadets the fundamentals of riding before they, I don't know, are thousands of feet in the air where they could, splat. So getting to put that knowledge into this book was, I had to rein myself in, pun 100% intended, a few times. I'm like, okay, people don't really need to know that level of detail. But it was super fun because I know Casey Azell has said this before, like there are 2 groups of people you do not want to piss off when you're writing. One is the gun people and the other is the horse girls. Like you better get the guns right and you better get the horses right. And there are no guns in this book, so I had to get the horses right. Yep. And I'm pretty confident I got it. If I didn't, don't tell me.
I'll try not to.
Thank you.
So
the third
thing.
The third. Oof.
So I'm going to reorder these according to what I believe is your favorite, coolest thing. So go ahead.
It was probably the first one, but so the third of the coolest things in Rise from Ruin is the flying. So I said earlier that I got, I worked my butt off. I did the right things. I earned a pilot slot in the Air Force. And I got about halfway through undergraduate pilot training before I was medically disqualified. Like I said, I love flying. I did not love getting, yelled at sometimes, but that's how we learn. My ears absolutely hated it and I couldn't clear them. So eventually they were like, yeah, you're done or you're going to blow out your ears permanently. I'm like, that would be bad. Let's not do that. But I got 2 rides short of final contact, which means that I got to do all of the aerobatics and barrel rolls and Immelman turns and S turns and so much fun. And then I took that first chapter of Rise from Ruin and I recreated sort of, I mean, it's dragons, so I couldn't absolutely recreate one of my flights, but I 100% put that knowledge in there. And I had people like Casey and like my husband who was an F-15E Strike Eagle pilot. He was a fighter pilot. I had them read it and they're like, yeah, that works. That totally works. So getting to put that experience into this novel right off the bat, first chapter, you are on the back of a dragon, upside down, going all over the place, avoiding enemies and everything. Oh, cool! It was so cool.
And to be clear, Boy Casey was pretty high speed, low drag as far as in his slower planes. The F-15, he did manage to do a lot of payload delivery
Oh yeah,
on things.
yeah. Boy Casey. So Boy Casey was a C-130 pilot, and he did stuff that he cannot talk about. My husband Dan, he was F-15E Strike Eagle pilot, and he 100% blew stuff up. And then Girl Casey, of course, with the helicopter, which is, by the way, all that is what I wanted to do. I wanted search and rescue. So that was so cool getting their feedback on that scene.
Yeah, I'm going to say that it was the third one because one of the things that struck me as you were talking is that how much you had to kind of readjust and change your own worldview in
Mm-hmm.
order to continue on with the mission and be associated with what it was you were so trained to do, so you could touch it and feel it. And even though your dream was somewhat ruined by the physical aspect of it, so yeah, I'm going to say it's number three. That's just me. That's my guess.
This is why just making me pick one, you guys, is so mean because there are so many cool things in this book, and I just can't wait to hear what everybody thinks about it because I want to know what everybody else's idea is on what their coolest thing was. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, in your acknowledgments, you write that some of the ideas in Rise from Ruin were helped along by Chuck Gannon, a friend of both of us. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about how that came about and what he helped you with.
That diabolical, delightful man, my God. So Chuck Gannon is amazing. I know at one point in his career, he worked as a script doctor, where he essentially, helped tweak and adjust things just to make them so much cooler than they already were. So I had the pleasure and privilege of getting to hang out with him at BarCon, which is where a bunch of authors just hang out at the bar, at Superstars, which is a writing seminar in Colorado Springs held every year in February, which is super cold. So this was maybe day 4. It's high altitude. It's cold. I've had a headache almost this entire convention because, again, high altitude. I am in Memphis, y'all. It is low altitude here, okay? So I am having a beverage, my first beverage in days at high altitude. And Chuck's like, so, Melissa, what you working on? I'm like, oh no. So I very just word vomited. This is what I'm working on. I had this short story. I'm expanding it to a novel. He's like, and I tell him the premise, and he's like, okay, let's talk some more. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is amazing. I'm gonna talk Dragon Riders and Griffin Riders with Chuck freaking Gannon. Awesome. And at that point, I'd already, I think I'd started the first couple chapters, so I was still fairly early on in the project. And at that point, you could not convince me of one thing, and it was that the trope of you have a dragon and you have a rider, or a griffin and a rider, and you have this bond that has entangled their souls together. I know that Anne McCaffrey and Dragon Riders of Pern, if the dragon died, the rider could live. They might not want to, but they could do it.
Yep.
Fourth Wing famously flipped that trope on its head, and the dragons could survive. Again, they might not want to, but they probably would because they're obstinate like that and awesome. But the rider couldn't survive the dragon's death. And I'm like, you know what? I think yes, and I think very much that if you have entangled your soul with another being, that you could not survive their death, because it's not like a bridge between two souls. You have blended that, metaphorically speaking, and if you lose one half of that, you're gonna bleed out. You are not gonna survive it.
Right. That
And
was one of
Chuck's
the
like,
coolest things. That was one of the coolest things, just in general, about this, that kind of does separate it from some of those other earlier works or different works. is the eye color change based on the soul bonding. I think that is really, really cool. It was one of those more interesting things that this is on a greater level than just the metaphysical. It's actually inspiring physical changes, especially given that the eyes are the window to the soul, that kind of. So
Exactly.
yeah, very cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So I was well, and what inspired that was like, how are you supposed to look through your bondmate's eyes if they aren't the same? So
right.
that physical manifestation of the bond was so cool to play with, especially because yes, there was a little science there. There was a little bit of, oh, if you add this color to this color, then at one point I'm just like, you know what? Screw it. Everybody gets cool eye colors, and I will just decide what color you have, and we're gonna go with it. So Harper made sense though, because her baby Griffin's eyes were red and hers were blue, and red and blue makes purple. So ha. Like, back to the Chuck Gannon story. So at that point, I was convinced you can't survive. And he's like, okay, but what if? I'm like, all right, I need another drink. Because I knew he had something good. He's like, all right, dragon and rider, that makes sense. And because he's Chuck, he went all sciency on me, and it made sense. He was like, dragons are different from us. They're reptilian. They are biologically speaking very different. And yes, so dragon rider, one or the other, they're both going together.
Right.
Griffins, though, Griffins are biologically similar to us. They're mammalian, right? More than anything else, they are like us. So what if Griffins could sever that bond and save their rider? And I'm like, oh, so smart. Because on the science side, that made sense. And on the fantasy side, I had already set that up in what I had written, because Griffins, my friends, Griffins are sneaky. They are smart and they are sneaky. And they just kind of hang out in the back and everything. And you don't really see them coming sometimes, which is kind of their skill. So it worked that a griffin could be smart enough and sneaky enough and love their rider enough to give them the chance to live. So if a griffin can see their death coming in time, they can sever the bond. Now, this shifted the entire course of my story, and in ways that I am not going to explain to anybody for reasons, spoilery reasons, but it opened up some new pathways for me. And Chuck and I talked for another hour or two more about just we delved into like World War II stuff. And at one point, I looked at my friend Shady, and I'm like, "Help me, dude! I am too inebriated for this right now." It was so much fun. But so griffins, if they see their death coming, they can sever, and that leaves the rider with the choice. They can choose to follow their bondmate into the dark, or they can fight to stay. And there's no predicting which way a rider will go. But unfortunately for my wonderful griffins, they cannot live without that bond. They cannot live without their rider. So kill the rider, you kill the griffin. Sorry, we're at war. Did I mention we're at war? And there's very little plot armor for my characters in this book, so please get attached to them, and please don't come after me if one of the ones you get attached to dies. I'm sorry.
So, in light of that, though, speaking of plot armor, which character in Rise from Ruin surprised you?
So there again, I'm breaking the rules. I'm not just picking one. Ha! You're welcome. We're gonna start with Oz. So, fun story. Sometimes you have these characters where you're like, this is just a throwaway character. I just need a name for this, just this instructor character. So this instructor character was super fun, just because I was able to take something from my experience in the Air Force. A lot of times you have what's called a first assignment instructor pilot. And it's a lieutenant that has literally just graduated pilot training, and their first assignment is to be an instructor. I had the privilege of working with some of them. Go one of two ways. Either they are total hard asses and they act like they weren't just in your shoes, or they are super awesome, laid back, and like, yeah, man, I was just in your shoes. Like, I get it. You're going to learn. So I had fun showing that difference. And Oz was, column B. He was very chill until he wasn't. But I'm like, I didn't have a name for him at first. I'm like, oh my God, names are so hard sometimes. Either the name just pops into your head, or you're like, all right, I'm going to search the baby name sites again for the millionth time. No, Google, I am not pregnant. I've had two. There will be no more. Thank you so much. So I was like, oh, hey, John R. Osborne. He is another fantastic author, both on the sci-fi and fantasy side. He works with CKP. And I hit him up. I'm like, hey, man, I need a character. Do you mind if I Tuckerize you? Can I steal your name, please? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm like, it's just a bit thing. It's not a big deal. As so often happens, that little side character grew into somebody so pivotal to the story. And I'm like, hey, Oz, by the way, your character is kind of like, he's the only reason that Harper survived at one point. So he's now a main character in this series. You're cool with that, right? So he also got an acknowledgement for letting me Tuckerize him.
All right.
It was fun. So the second character that surprised me, is Keaton. So Keaton is not based off of anybody. However, he is very much a reflection of that brother in arms relationship that I had with so many people that I served with. And I didn't really plan for him. I knew I needed a team leader in the academy setting that could kind of knock Harper down a peg or two, because Harper came from the Dragon Rider side, where they are super competitive and super arrogant. And, she's been knocked on her ass so many times at this point that he's just like, oh dear God, I've gotten stuck with this arrogant little brat who wasn't supposed to be a Griffin rider, who took the place of the person that was supposed to be the team leader. So now I'm stuck as the team leader and all these things. So I needed a character that could play off of her like that. And he surprised the heck out of me, because he was not just her team leader or her brother in arms. He literally, by the end of the story, became her brother. And building up that relationship between those two characters, it was supposed to be, when I was doing the planning stages of this, like as I've said before, like I sneak in romance wherever I can because I love it. I don't like it to be the central point of the plot. I don't write romance, but I love a good romantic subplot. So Harper and her idiot Dimitri, they were supposed to be that main subplot line, and I'm like, sorry, man, you're gonna have to wait for book 2, because yes, you get a subplot, but it is not about those two. It was about Harper and her bond with her brother in arms, Keaton, and
there's a small element of like, well, are they or and then it becomes clear. But yeah, it's a fascinating relationship that I really enjoyed reading through and having them kind of illustrate that yes, we need each other in this zone and in this life and that kind of thing. So it was really quite impressive on that scale as well. So you mentioned where you live, and Rise from Ruin is set in an almost recognizable area of our world. In fact, you named it, and as far as the academy is concerned, and it's very similar to a local region a state that we both live in, kind of thing.
so weird. I
I don't
can't
know how that
imagine why I
happened.
would have done that.
So, do you care to tell us a little bit about how that came to pass? Is it just write what you know, or?
Oh, it's so strange that I would name my country that my main character is from Tennyson. Like it's like language drift is a thing. It's very interesting. Also very interesting that I mentioned that it's post-apocalyptic fantasy adventure. It's so weird. Hmm. So I did have a lot of fun with that, and readers should be able to pick on some geographical references and maybe start piecing together what kind of world this is and possibly what happened sometime in the not so distant past. But I mentioned Anne McCaffrey. I have been remiss and I have not mentioned Valdemar yet, with Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon, who very I did have the I was super awkward, y'all. Like fangirling like hard when I got to talk with Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon, mostly because it was on the phone, so it was very weird. But Larry Dixon said, everything is better with a Griffin. Just ask the Griffin. He'll tell you himself. And he's totally right. Felix 100% agrees with him. But I haven't mentioned the other major influence on my writing, and that's Terry Brooks with the Sword of Shannara series. I have no idea if I'm saying that word right, but to me it's Shannara, so here we are.
Yep.
I was fascinated as a kid because I read those, I read Dragonflight and the Black Griffin and the Sword of Shannara roughly at the same age,
Right.
and that whole post-apocalyptic aspect was super fascinating to me as a kid. I'm like, oh, what happened? Like, how did all this stuff like come to pass? And getting to read that, like he had the other two trilogies that were set. One was set in essentially our time, and then there was that bridge trilogy between everything's fine, everything is like this post-apocalyptic fantasy world, and here's how we got there.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. I may or may not be developing a prequel series for Griffins about that, but
Very cool.
plans. I have so many plans.
So I really liked your Griffins. Clearly, you do too.
Well, thank
And one
you.
in particular, of course, Felix.
Mhm.
Without going too deep into spoiler land, what inspired Felix? You have a pet?
So
You have a cat, a dog?
I do have dogs. I have two German Shepherds that are about the size of miniature horses. They are about 100 and 120 pounds. And I kind of forget, I know I'm tangenting here, but you know what? Fine. I kind of forget how big Finnegan Finn, my big white goofball, is until I see pictures of him with me. I'm like, holy crap, that dog is almost as big as me. But Felix, fun story. So the Baen Fantasy Adventure Award, I'm going back a couple of years. I know we don't do time math, but here we are. I remember going to bed maybe 10 days before that contest closed out, being very smug. I had no intentions of submitting that year. I'd submitted the year before. I went through all the stress of like, okay, everything's formatted. I have followed the rules. I've done the things. Cool. This year, I'm like, no, I'm not. I have another project working on. I have no time. I have no ideas. Stupid brain. And I woke up the next morning with an idea. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. I really like this idea. I'm going to write down notes because this Griffin popped into my head and would not stop talking. So I'm like, I will write down notes. This is so cool. I will develop this for next year. 4,000 words later, I'm like, well, I guess I'm writing the story right now because the Griffins in my head said so. I finished it the next day, and then that took second place. So I sent it before I submitted it. I sent it to Marisa Wolf, and I'm like, I don't know if this is hot garbage or if I'm kidding myself. Like, tell me what you think. She replied back in all caps, screaming at me, "Yes, please. Hi, I would like more Dragon Core and Griffin Core and Griffins like right now. Thank you so much." I'm like, yay!
Never seen anything from Marisa that was not
All caps.
the complete utterance of subtlety. She's always just lowercase all the way through,
Oh,
getting
uh-huh.
her point across with just a bomo, no nothing else, just bomo after bomo.
All caps
No,
enthusiasm.
no, 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 no caps necessary for Marisa. Never.
Never. So Felix, to bring it back to your actual question, Felix was not inspired by any pets or anything like that. However, the very first adult fantasy book I read was The Black Griffin, and Scandrodon was the first non-human character I read that was a fully fleshed character, a person in his own right. And that stuck with me. Like Dragon Riders of Pern, those Griffins of Valdemar, they were foundational. When I go back and read those books, I'm like, oh, I write things like this because of this. I do a lot of this stuff because of Mercedes Lackey and the way she wrote this. I'm like, oh,
Right.
dang.
Those
So
the Valdemar books are really, really good. If you haven't read them already, anybody in our audience, they should be read.
because they also feature that bond with the companions, and
Yep.
as a horse girl, that discovering that series was amazing.
Yep.
Um, but Felix just kind of showed up one day, and that Griffin has all the plot armor. Do you hear me, Chuck? He has all the plot armor. I will never kill him
She
because
says
that was
that
one of his
now.
suggestions. He was like, "What if you killed your Griffin?" I'm like, "No, not to cover your ears." No, it was amazing. He probably thinks I'm crazy, but I mean, I kind of am. I have voices in my head. And if I was anything but an author, I'd probably be locked up in a padded room. I mean, is what it is.
So, on the opposite end of that poll, what character from Rise from Rome would you want to avoid like the plague, and why?
Oh my god. So it is so easy to go, well, Savinia is the enemy nation. I would totally avoid any of those, enemy soldiers and everything. But really, that's not the answer. The answer is one Captain Westbrook. Captain Westbrook is a Tennyson dragon rider. He rides a red dragon. He is a bit of a arrogant asshole, and some of that is very true. Like pilots can be arrogant, and for good reason, because the amount of training they go through, the amount of work and effort and dedication, it's earned.
And the confidence that you need to
The
pilot.
confidence that
Yeah.
you need. So Captain Westbrook was a lot of fun to build out because two reasons. One, in the book setting, so there is a bit of a healthy and unhealthy rivalry between the Dragon Rider cadets and the Griffin cadets at the Academy. The reason for that is, I say it first line of the book, everybody wants to be a Dragon Rider. However, there's only so many spots. There's only so many dragon eggs. And the competition for those top spots is fierce. So you have to be a certain level of arrogant and competitive to do well enough to earn those spots. And when you have that kind of dichotomy of like, well, the best of the best are clearly dragon riders, and if you are not a dragon rider, you are, well, you're just a Griffin rider. Like that's one of the whiplash things that Harper had to go through when she went from being one of the top ranked cadets to you're just a Griffin rider. And Captain Westbrook, even though he is an active duty officer and should be above that kind of
Yes.
mindset, is 100% a fan of that mindset. If you are not a dragon rider, you are not worth my time. And I got to show how he treated Harper when she was a dragon rider cadet versus how he treated her, or rather didn't even bother to notice her when she was just a Griffin rider. On the actual like reality side of the house, I went through that experience myself. When I was a pilot trainee, I had no specific officers. So Westbrook is not based off anybody in particular, okay? But he is based off of that attitude that I ran into more than once, where when I was a pilot trainee, I was treated a certain way by a certain type of officer, where you're a bag wearer, you are in a flight suit, you are worth my time. And then when I got medically disqualified and retrained into airfield operations, which was air traffic control, airfield management, taking care of like 119 to 21-year-olds. Oh, and by the way, the airfield itself, the second most important thing on any Air Force base, second to the golf course. Like, so it was related, but I was not a pilot anymore. And there were officers who would not give me the time of day because, well, why should I trust your opinion? You're not a pilot. I I have used this story in no kidding job interviews as an example of how to problem solve in an indirect way. So there I was, sitting in a meeting with a senior officer, my flight commander, and another pilot, because this senior officer wanted to do something at the airfield that, per the regulations, we couldn't do it. So what should have been a 5-minute meeting of, I have the regulation in front of me, here's the book, here's the exact passage that says we can't do this. It should have been a 5-minute meeting, but both myself and my flight commander were not pilots, so it devolved into a not quite shouting match between my flight commander and the senior officer. And I'm sitting there, I look at the pilot sitting next to me, and I shove the regulation in front of him, and I point at what I had already said. And I'm like, hey man, help me out.
Yeah. Let the pilot speak to the pilot.
And then that pilot read exactly word for word what I had. And the senior officer went, oh, well, I guess we can't do that then. All right, meeting adjourned. See you guys. That pilot, by the way, that was sitting next to me is now my husband.
There you go.
I mean, for all the reasons, not just for that. But
it's interesting to me too, just on an aside, that in the current era, you would have been shunted to drones.
I mean, possibly, yeah, absolutely. That wasn't a career field. No time math, but it was a minute ago, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it's fascinating to me, given what Casey's daughter just did and what she's going to do. Girl Casey. But yeah, that's kind of yeah. So we have to make sure we make those distinctions here. We have a lot of Daves. We got less Daves than we used to. We also have some Caseys now. So Anyway,
There's a number
uh,
of Christophers or Chris's too.
yeah, there's that too.
Mhm.
So, uh, in a similar vein, so we already went on that. Which character would you want though as an ally?
Oh, so I've been told that I cannot choose Felix. Fine, I will choose somebody who is just as awesome as Felix in an entirely different way. But before I tell you, we're gonna tangent again. So one of the coolest haha things that I got to do with Rise from Ruin was I got to play with the dragon specializations because I'm like, I'm not just gonna have dragons, y'all. I'm an Air Force nerd. I am going to take these dragons and I'm going to create specializations that kind of, mimic what we have right now in the Air Force. So green dragons became my helicopter analog. They are very good at hovering. They're primarily used in search and rescue operations. They're much stronger than they look. They have this cool camouflage ability. Blue dragons, those are my eyes in the sky. They can fly higher than their rider can breathe because they that's what they're designed to do. They have the really really long narrow wings and they're meant as AWACS or U2 spy planes. Red dragons, those are my shock troops. They are vicious, aggressive, spiky, just big old, like they will tear shit up. Gray dragons, those are my happy little bombers. They will just be all super happy as they drop bombs on your head. I love them so much. They're also the most variation in that particular specialization because they can fly super fast. So maybe we have some messenger dragons. Um, and then there's the black dragons. The black dragons are my favorite. They, as babies, are these adorable little, just adorable little babies that grow up into huge, unstoppable tanks on the battlefield. And I didn't initially do this, but this, going back to the power of friendship, Marisa Wolf read the first draft of Rise from Ruin, and she's like, "My love, you describe this adorable little baby tank at the beginning, but he's never there again. But then Dimitri, he's got these cool eyes, and there is this baby tank here, and why does Dimitri not have the black dragon?" And I'm like, "Girl, you're right. You're so right." So I gave Dimitri Riven, who is the first black dragon that the Academy has managed to produce in years. And he is the most fun dragon that I get to play around with because he is fierce and protective and loyal and just I would not want to face him on a battlefield, but off the battlefield, he is just super nice and he loves Harper. And part of the reason for that is when you have your soul entangled with another, how you feel as a rider about another rider, that's going to influence your bond mate just a little bit. So getting to play up that aspect of my little romantic subplot and show that through Riven
Right.
was whew, even better in book two, which is progressing. But if I had to pick anybody as an ally, I would pick Riven because not only is he a sweetheart, he's a black dragon, and if I need somebody squished, he's gonna go squish them for me because he might not be full grown yet. He's not even full grown in book two, but he's gonna be huge one day. And I can't think of a better ally. I want all the dragons though. To be honest, I want all the dragons, and I want my Griffin. Griffin? Where is my Griffin? I
I don't
want
know.
one. I want
Can't
one.
say. Can't say as I know.
all
So,
I'm all I'm saying before we go to the next question is that there is that company that has supposedly created dire wolves, and not only do I want a dire wolf puppy, I think it is proof that we are living in the Griffins timeline, and we will one day get Griffins and dragons, and
if we
hopefully
have
not.
if we have an opportunity to see the white shepherd, it's pretty much the white direwolf. He's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
So.
Oh
Rise from Ruin deals a lot with hopes and dreams and service to one's country. We touched upon this already a little bit. Even when the country they serve doesn't necessarily love, let alone understand those who are serving it. Is this rooted in personal experience or something you just wanted to explore? Unpack that a little bit for us.
man. All right, so we have been very fortunate, current veterans, that our country and the civilian population has been super supportive. Like we have not gone through anything like the Vietnam vets did. Like everybody has been very kind, and thank you for your service. I mean, holy crap, man, we're recording this on Memorial Day weekend. This is
Right.
something that's it's one of those things where it's not a bad thing. What I was trying to do was show that the civilian population in Tennyson specifically, they're supportive. They do what they can. However, they cannot understand, especially the riders, because the riders are different. The regular soldiers, they're just like the civilians. They're no different except for their level of experience, and they can relate to that. But riders have literally become more than, not less than, more than human, because you can't entangle your soul and bond with something that's not human and stay the same.
Right.
So Harper develops, some Griffin tendencies. They have a tendency to tilt their head a little bit like their Griffins do. They have a tendency to get feelings like they have those Griffin instincts, and they have to learn how to listen to them. And then there's the eyes, that physical manifestation of the bond. So you have the civilian population that, for the most part, isn't touched by the war, which is kind of how 9/11, the war on terror, went with this country, where the majority of the population was not directly affected. We had less than 1% of the population that actively served during that time. I had a commander who was super smart. He at one point did the math, and I think it was like less than 0.1% was actively serving.
Yeah.
And getting to dive into that a little bit was important to me, because while people are incredibly supportive of us, there are things that we can't explain. And you, as a veteran police officer, you know what I'm talking about. Where
Right.
if you don't have that shared experience, you can talk till you're blue in the face, and there'll be sympathy maybe, or an attempt to understand, but not true empathy. And it's
Well,
just one of
there's
those.
empathy. It's just not the empathy of without having to explain it. You don't have to do. You can't use shorthand.
No,
Somebody who hasn't gone through it, and for ease of access to kind of release some of the feelings that you might have, you need that shorthand. You
you
need
do.
somebody that you can talk to without
And
unpacking everything.
and on the lighter side of the house, like, man, dark humor is like,
Great
I,
survival mechanism.
it
Yeah.
is. It is when everything is going to shit. Being able to joke about it is key. Like, so being able to be surrounded by people that have been through what you have been through, have experienced the same things, it's incredibly supportive. So my riders, they are even more separated from the civilian population than the conventional soldiers are. And it's the only ones who can understand what a rider goes through is another rider, which is why I make the point that, for the most part, riders either end up with other riders, or they end up with that subset of the population that is bond capable and chose not to bond. And you do get that division in the population, where you have the riders who are typically out on the front lines or in the border towns guarding the borders of the country. And the civilians, especially in the capital, they don't usually see dragons or griffins or riders. They're stories. So getting to write a scene in the capital where you have this little girl who's like, "Oh, your griffin is so pretty. I want one." And like, poor Felix is going, "I'm not a pet. I'm a person." And the dichotomy of this little girl thinking this is the coolest thing ever, and the parent being like, "Oh my God, that's a monster." Like, go do your job out on the front lines and leave us in peace. It was fun getting to play with that.
That's one of the interesting things. I mean, to my mind, is you bring your I don't want to call it your warthog, the A10 warthog. You bring it to the city, and they're going to look at it and go, "That's scary. It's not cool." Especially
Mhm.
when it starts talking to you. But the kid is like, "That's really cool. That's an A10 warthog," kind of thing. So yeah, I dug that scene on a number of levels, because they are weapons, but they're so much more than that. They are soldiers, but they're so much more than that. That's one of those interesting things that I found in this book, and I'm super excited to hear that we have another one on the way, et cetera. So I'm looking
Right.
forward to being able to read that as well. So, penultimate question: what, aside from its entertainment value, do you hope readers will carry with them long after having read Rise from Ruin?
So this question is really tough for me. Not because not because it's a hard question to answer, but because it's kind of mushy. I mean, at the end of the day, like, yes, this is an awesome story about dragon riders and griffin riders and the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood that form between active duty members, and about griffins and just the lengths that we will go to for each other. And it's about all those things, right? But more than anything else, it is that you are never alone. And that concept when I was 11 and incredibly lonely as a lot of kids are at that age when we're going through so much, so many changes, so many friend groups. That concept of a bondmate that meant you were never alone was huge to me and obviously foundational. So it's that whole you're never alone. I am very fortunate now with the friend group that I have, and I include you among them. Uh, to have that support, to have the family that I have, my found family, and I know that not everybody has that, but there's always books. And when I was young, books saved me, and I know that I'm not the only one who had that experience where being able to disappear into a book just for a little bit, that was super helpful with the things I was going through at that time. So never alone is a key thread that winds through this entire story. And it also ties into Keaton and Harper's relationship too. So
Everyone's
that,
relationship in the book. Yeah,
yeah.
that's why for one reason that that's one reason that Westbrook stands out as such an a-hole
Yeah, poor
is
Westbrook.
because he's he has this bond and yet he's still an a-hole. So that's one of the cooler things about it is that if he's choosing to be on his own, then he's choosing to be on his own.
Hmm.
And why is he doing that? So yeah,
Yeah, why? I mean, maybe that's something we'll find out in book two. Who knows?
there we go. One would hope. Usually there's reasons, right? That's one thing 20 years and as a police officer taught me was, yeah, there's usually reasons. Whether or not they're cool to you is entirely irrelevant. Most people have
Right?
their own
No,
reasons
there's
for doing and being the way they are. So
no, we are the hero of our own story. We are always the hero. And that's, I mean, even with your villains, they are the hero of their own story and they have their reasons. You just might not like them. Hmm.
sure. So what conventions can your fans hope to catch up with you at, and what other work have you got in the pipeline aside from maybe a next one?
So the is because oh my god, LibertyCon in Chattanooga over June 20th through the 22nd, I think, is coming up real quick. Whew. That I'm still not sure how it's May because it still feels like January and we're already halfway through.
End of May. Yeah.
Like holy crap! So I will be in Chattanooga. I will be
The
there
week
with.
after this airs, actually, I think it's yeah. The week after this airs, you'll be in Chattanooga.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. You'll be there. Casey Azell will be there. Marisa Wolf. If you want to find us and hang out with us, just follow the sound of cackling and chaos. You will find us with all of our author friends and crew. And I'm gonna have so much fun. It's gonna be great. And we're gonna eat all the food. I'm just warning you now, Griffin. There will be dessert. Mhm.
Gotcha.
So after that, I don't have anything for a few months until Labor Day weekend. I will be at Dragon Con. I'm super excited because Dragon Con is actually the first convention I ever went to as a baby lieutenant. And boy, was that fun. I was like a 3-day Halloween party for adults, and that's how I met Casey Azell and a whole bunch of people.
I call it a different way. It's Mardi Gras for nerds.
Yeah, yeah, right? I was like, oh my god, I went from like no kidding a sortie. Like I was still in pilot training when I went to my first Dragon Con. So I went from okay, I just got my butt kicked on this training sortie, had to do the debrief and everything, and then met my friend in the parking lot and changed really quick. I'm like, all right, we're going to Atlanta because I was stationed at Moody, so it was only a couple-hour drive to go from that military environment to holy crap, look at all these costume nerds all over the streets. This is so cool. So I went for a number of years just as a fan,
Right.
and then had to take a break for a number of years because kids and life and all the things.
Right.
And then I started going as an author, and it is an entirely different experience. And this year, my friends, this year is the first year I get to go as an intending pro, and I am So excited. It's going to be so much fun. So I will be on panels, I'm sure, and I will be causing chaos all over the place and probably always have a mocha with me because Dragon Con is exhausting and amazing and fun and lots of friends and people and crowds. It's
It's
going to be
funny that
great.
you say that about going as a fan first. Is that when I had heard a lot about it, and I'm like, I'm only going to go as a pro. So that's what I did. My first year was 2017, as when got my first novel out there. So, or it was
Oh,
in the works. It wasn't quite out, or no, it was out. But
nice.
yeah, yeah, I totally get that, and it must be really interesting for you to be that in that transitional phase. I mean, granted, we've got 10 novels before this one that we can talk about, but that you kind of went, and then you're small press publishing, and then now you're on a bigger press, et cetera. So the kind of steps or the grade of the career, and then finding out what it's gonna be like as the author, and hopefully this much beloved series that it will eventually become. That
I hope so.
you'll be on the next level, and you won't want to talk to me anymore.
Oh, please.
But
Y'all, Griffin will always be my favorite editor ever because thanks to Griffin, you guys can find out what a real Griffin, not this Griffin, smells like because somehow
don't come up
my
and smell me.
my dumbass forgot to describe the scent of Griffins and he was like, "Okay, this is my one non-negotiable edit for you. You have to tell me what do they smell like?" I'm like, "Okay, all right, fair. My bad."
Sure. All right.
So
Well,
yes, you will always be like you don't get to not talk to me. I'm just saying.
there we go. All right. Well, very cool. Thank you very much for attending. And did you talk about anything else that you
Oh,
got in progress?
so I have secrets. Y'all, I have so many secrets. It's amazing. And I can't tell you about any of them yet. And it's amazing. But what I can tell you is that the sequel to Rise from Ruin is progressing. I am all right. Anybody else would be done at 124,000 words, but I've got about maybe 40 more to go. It's fine. We're not going to do the math right now. It's fine. So I've got book 2 in the works. Book 3 will probably be a next year project. I have 2 secret projects that I cannot talk about yet. But I can also mention that that 4th book in my salvage title trilogy, the first characters I ever created, that first series, it actually comes out next Friday, which would not for when this podcast actually releases, but May 30th, that book comes out, which is why, like I said, Rise from Ruin is my 11th, not my 10th. So
Right.
that one will be out. If you like sci-fi stuff, you can see how Kaylee's adventure finally ends, and then you can pick up Rise from Ruin and find out how Harper's begins.
Yep, for sure. Oh, that's one thing we didn't mention this time as well. You have a short fiction that you put up on the Bane free,
Oh my
for
god,
free
that's
on the Bane
amazing!
website, right?
Okay. All right. So one thing that is not a spoiler, you guys, is that the entire reason that Harper ends up with a Griffin is because of a prank that goes wrong. And I was like, oh, I get the opportunity to write a short story for this universe. Heck yes, I am writing a prequel that explains the start of that infamous prank war that changed so many things. So I set This Means War back at the beginning when Harper and Dimitri and Callum and Zane, the 3 morons, were just trainees. They weren't even cadets yet. They were going through the indoc training process to get into the academy. And the only reason those morons made it in was because they worked together. So getting to write that story was so much fun. It is free on the Bane website. Please go read it. Tell me what you think. I've got reels up all over the place. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm on TikTok now. I had to get a burner phone for that. My husband is amazing. So, yes, This Means War. Free. Read that one first. You won't regret it, and then pick up Rise from Ruin, and you'll see what the 3 morons did and why Harper is so furious at them. Mm,
Sure.
boys.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa. I appreciate you coming on the Bane Free Radio Hour today. This has been Griffin Barber in conversation with Melissa Olthoff about Rise from Ruin, her novel forthcoming, or actually already out by a week, I think, by the time this airs.
So exciting.
Good night, or good day, whatever it may be.
Bye.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish the job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Macon, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
As I opened the door, I turned back to him. Macon really is a beautiful planet. I don't think these 30 days will do you any good at all, but I wish you luck. I hope you take care of this place. I thought back to my childhood on Pinkelponker and tried to remember how much I had loved that place as a child. But aside from a few scattered good memories, all that remained was pain from the loss of Jenny and anger at the government that had taken her. I couldn't think of a single place that meant as much to me as Barnes claimed Macon mattered to him. I truly wish you luck. Chapter 5. I decided to ride in Lobo to the jump gate. I could have sent him separately and taken the shuttle, but I figured it was time to get to know my new weapon. When I was aboard and no longer had to deal with Slake and Barnes, I realized that rescuing Jasmine had left me upbeat, happy to have done something unequivocally good for a change. No one dead, no one even hurt. A girl back with her father, and a big payment in the bargain. Everything had worked out perfectly. Even Lobo seemed content. He took the news that I owned him about as well as I could have hoped. "So, what does this mean to me?" he asked. "You won't be stuck here," I said. "Maybe you'll see some action and, with any luck at all, we'll fix you." "Excellent," he said. For a change, I appreciated his emotion programming. "Where are we going?" he asked. I thought about Slake's recommendation. Even if Osterlad didn't check out, Lankin had a large enough population that it was sure to maintain a flourishing underground market. I could find someone there who could get me the new weapons control complex Lobo needed. Buying it would take all the money I'd made from Slake plus some of my own, but then Lobo would be whole. Having a working PCAV would have to be a competitive advantage when it came time to go back to courier work. Plus, I felt I owed Lobo for what he had done to help me before I owned him. I would make him whole. We'd head to Lankin. Before we did, though, I wanted a last look at some of the Macon beaches. "To the shore," I said. Then up to the jump gate and on to Lankin. I had Lobo follow a lazy trajectory along the shoreline. Most of the territory on this section of the coast appeared untouched, tall trees giving way to lower growth, which in turn yielded to perfect white sand, and then the ocean. As we went higher, I could see the northernmost settlement, a town about half the size of Glen's Garden. Some sort of celebration, perhaps a tourist show, was in progress. Fireworks painting the air over the town. We were more than high enough to be out of range of any shells they might be shooting, so I had Lobo hover for a few minutes and open a viewing port in the floor so I could watch the show. I'd never seen a fireworks display from above. The projectiles initially looked like missiles, so stupid they didn't know how to run evasive routes, shooting upward with long, sometimes colored smoke trails. The dull gray arcs peaked, the missiles winked out, and a split second later, flowers of color burst into the air. Golden crescents flashed below us, mad spirals of reds and blues and whites pinwheeled across my vision, and multicolored gewgaws danced over the sky. The shapes dissolved as the flaming colors dashed away to the ground, some fading slowly like candles burning down, others winking out like lights snapped suddenly off.
This has been the Bane Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week as I interview S.M. Sterling on his latest Bane book, The Winds of Fate. And later, we continue with part 16 of One Jump Ahead by Mark Van Dame. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.